So, Masters of the Universe is the adaptation of the hit 80s TV show and toy line that sees a young Adam being exiled from his home planet after the treacherous villain Skeletor takes over and completely changes his home world, only to return later in life with his sacred weapon to reclaim his throne. So before getting into my review, I just wanted to talk about what my expectations were going into this film and kind of my knowledge on the history of this, IP, when it comes to the original series, the toy line, and everything like that. I have never, ever really known anything when it comes to He-Man or Masters of the Universe. So I was very much the definition of a new viewer of any of this content, of any of this world. I never watched the original 80s TV show. I was never big into the toys. There really wasn't even all that much I could have told you about the lore of this universe even before seeing the film. And I'll be honest too, the trailers didn't really wow me. Yeah, it looked like fun, but it wasn't anything that looked like it was something that was going to drag me in and catch my attention and make me go, hey, I wanted to see this film. The only reason I actually even ended up seeing it is because a good buddy of mine wanted to see it, and he's been a fan of this property for quite some time. So I decided to go check it out with him. And I gotta say, after seeing the film, this is easily my biggest surprise of the entire year so far, because I thoroughly had a good time with this movie. Like I said, no expectations whatsoever going into it, and I had such a blast watching this film. I think this movie is so fun and delivers everything that a big blockbuster of this magnitude should. And I would go out on a limb and actually say that I think this is the best blockbuster that we have gotten so far in 2026. To start off with my positives, I have to say this feels like a very faithful adaptation of an 80s Saturday morning cartoon. It embraces the silliness and the campiness of all, and I actually think that is one of the biggest charms about this film and why it worked so well for me. It knows the type of movie that we're here to watch and how silly and campy it is, but it does it in a way that kind of winks at the audience, but then also can take itself seriously in the moments that it needs to. And I like when a movie like this, even if it's not one that I was highly anticipating or would have normally wanted to see, can bring me in and then just completely deliver and stay true to what it set out to be. And I think Masters of the Universe does that very, very well. But even with how campy and how silly the film is, and how much of an homage it is to those 80s Saturday morning cartoons, it also does a really good job at vibing with a modern blockbuster as well. For all of the things that it does well on the 80s style that we have there, it also brings what you would expect to a modern blockbuster. The big action set pieces, the comedy, the emotional moments when it needs to be. So I felt like this was a very good modernization of a classic story and a classic IP here brought into 2026. And man, is this movie not light on action. There are so many action sequences in this film. They're plentiful, but they're also very, very well shot and very, very well done. I don't think there was any weak action scenes in this entire film. I think every time that the action gets picked up and starts going, it's such a fun time, and it's choreographed really, really well and shot really, really well, which again, for this type of movie, I was not expecting to enjoy the action scenes, but I really felt like they delivered. I actually thought the acting here was really good as well. The main three leads in particular, their chemistry and how well they do with one another. With the Nicholas Gallo something, I don't know, I'm really bad with pronouncing names. Camila Mendes as Tila, and then Idris Elba as Duncan. I felt like those three had a really good chemistry in this film and worked really well with one another, specifically with the comedic timing and some of the more emotional moments, especially towards the third act. I really felt like there was a lot more times that I found myself getting emotional when that not on my bingo card whatsoever, that this movie was going to get the emotions out of me the way that it did. I was very, very pleasantly surprised by that, and I think that has a lot to do with the performances from the three leads here. And as much as it pains me to say this, I think Jared Leto completely stole the show as Skeletor. He perfectly encapsulates a very cheesy 80s villain where he's very menacing in a lot of moments, and especially in the physicality, in the action. He's a very threatening villain, but then he's also very good at kind of the sudden switch into the campiness and the cheesiness of the 80s. So I really give good props here to Jared Leto, which I don't do very often. But, I got to call it like I see it. I think Jared Leto was probably the standout of this film, and I really hope in the future we can get him back as this character. I like what he did here, and I don't even know how much of the performance was actually him. I think I've seen some photos that they basically CGI'd the mask on him. So if it was him throughout it all, I really think he does a great job here. I also think the score here was fantastic. Now, again, I'm not a fan of this IP. I am not very experienced in the other properties with the TV show and any of the other spin-offs that came. So I'm not really sure how much of the soundtrack here is from that original show or from early on when these were the toy line. I'm not really sure. But the soundtrack that we got here, I thought, was extremely epic, particularly like the main theme that they played throughout the film. It just swelled up the emotion and it got me into every single scene that we were dealing with here. So the soundtrack was easily one of the biggest highlights of this film for me. And for my final positive, I do have to say I'm obviously very disappointed with how low the box office has been so far with this film, because I believe that this sets up a franchise and further sequels very, very well. There's obviously a couple of post-credit scenes that set up where we could go in another film or another story, and I would like to see that come to fruition because I think what they created here was very well done. And I think Travis Knight is great. I haven't given him a shout, but I think his vision and his direction in this movie is really what stands out. And he's made a couple other films as well that I've really liked. So I think he's a good director and someone to helm, this franchise going forward. I just hope that Amazon sees the reception to this movie and decides to continue, because it's not going to happen if we're just basing it off of box office, which is, kind of disappointing. But I think what they set up here promises for a good future with multiple movies. You could even do spin-offs if you wanted. And I would like to see it continue. I would be really disappointed if we can't see, a continuation of this story. Don't really have a lot negative to say about this film, so I'm just going to go into what for me was the only negative about this movie, and that's that I think in the first half of the film we spent a little too much time on Earth. I don't really think anything that is interesting and good about this film really happens in that first half when we're just on Earth, kind of learning about who Adam is as like a person and a human. There's not really all that much that's exciting and that goes on. I think his kind of goofy silliness and humor doesn't really work all that well when you put it into a modern Earth. So I think this movie gets infinitely better once we get to Eternia. And I just think that throws off the pacing a little bit. So I think the pacing of the movie has a little bit of a problem in the first half. But, man, once we get off Earth and we go to Eternia, this is just a blast. I think it takes off after that and does a really good job. I think the intro was really good, too. They have, like, a whole extended sequence on Eternia when Adam is a child and, kind of explains the whole, like, lore and what this universe is and how we end up where we are in kind of the main timeline of the movie. And that sequence was great. It was short, though. It was only about the first 10, maybe 15 minutes at most. And then we go to Earth for like 40 minutes after that. But then once we go back to Eternia, I think that's really where the movie takes off and really kicks into high gear. So it can kind of create a little bit of an uneven experience, at least in the first half. But man, I can't believe I'm saying this. Masters of the Universe is one of my favorite films of the year so far. I had a blast with this movie. I had so much more fun than I was expecting. I just enjoyed this movie much more than I really thought I would. And it's honestly a movie I can't wait to watch again. And like I said, I think it's my favorite blockbuster of the year so far. I think we've had a lot of disappointing films when it comes to the bigger budget blockbuster side. But Masters of the Universe delivers on a lot of fronts, and I don't really have a lot negative to say about the movie. Again, it's not the most deep, cinema style film. It's very popcorny, very cheesy, very 80s nostalgia style film. But I think what it set out to do, it did so effectively. So I had such a blast with Masters of the Universe, and like I said, I really hope they continue this franchise, give us more, continue on, see the positive reception that this movie is getting, Amazon, and decide to go forward, because I think you can start to really turn a profit once you've established and gotten good faith with the audience. I think moving forward, you're going to make some money because people are going to know that this franchise is good and it's quality. So I hope they continue. I pray it happens because I really, really enjoyed this film. So that's it for my review of Masters of the Universe. Go ahead, comment below. Let me know what you thought. Even if you're a fan or not a fan, comment below. Let me know, your opinions. Go ahead and like the video. Subscribe if you haven't. I'm going to keep continuing to put out content, keep putting out reviews, doing some gaming live streams, and all that fun stuff. But besides that, that is all for me today. Everyone, have a great night.